Shocked. I think shocked is the word. People became sick with COVID-19. My patients did, and they called me, and I did everything I could to save them, to prevent hospitalization and death. When they called other doctors, the other doctors did nothing for them. For the first 2 years of the pandemic, they said, sorry, no treatment. Well, thanks for having me.
I saw you, myself and my girlfriend saw you down at Calvary Baptist Church several years ago speaking. And what a wonderful venue. And you were, I think you did 2 different episodes down there, and you were full of vim and vigor, and certainly passion for what you believe in. And I know that for those who may not know who you are, you certainly have been at the center of some of the very strong conversation around COVID and vaccines. You also are a tremendously credentialed background as a former professor of medicine, published very extensively in cardiovascular medicine, and very well read, very well spoken on all levels of health. And you certainly, from me knowing and listening to you, you share a lot of the philosophies that I certainly have had as in my adult life, following the philosophy of holistic health and, less intervention with hardcore medicine and prescriptions, but with lifestyle and also speaking the truth. And, it's hard to speak the truth when everybody else is saying something different. And you could have cowered down, and you didn't. What you did was stand firm. And I know when COVID started and we were threatened with being closed as a business by the health department, I brought each of my employees in, and I said to each of them, I truly feel I've lived my whole life to prepare me for this moment. And I don't know if you felt that way when all of it started with you, but you stood up high and strong, and I was just very, very impressed with the hero status. And you'll always be one in my mind. So maybe how do you feel about what you're doing now? Are things smoothed out? Are you still under controversy? What's going on?
Now, I don't feel naturally heroic or courageous, but through the course of the pandemic, I was one of the few doctors who stood up, devised early treatment programs, published them, demonstrated they worked. You developed the evidence base, the consensus, and moved forward, really. The McCullough protocol, which now has been credited with saving of tens of millions of lives, sparing hundreds of millions of hospitalizations, greatest achievement that I could ever imagine in my career. And then I made the right call on the COVID-19 vaccines, not safe, not effective for use. Now, I've been to Chattanooga twice, right? I was at Calvary Chapel, packed crowds both times. The second time I came, the lecture series was called The Art of War. The Art of War. It's almost as if we're in a spiritual war at this time, an epic fight between good and evil.
Boy, that's definitely right on. Clint wants to ask you something.
I'm not going to have as much say-so in this conversation. Ed's been looking forward to it. I do have a question, though. Did the response from the general medical community surprise you? This is a world you've been in forever, and all of a sudden here came this crisis. Did the response from people that you had been associated with for years, did that surprise you, or did that not surprise you? Were you expecting that? Was like, that's kind of a normal response I would expect?
Shocked. I think shocked is the word. People became sick with COVID-19. My patients did. They have heart failure, emphysema, very frail. And they called me, and I did everything I could to save them, to prevent hospitalization and death. When they called other doctors, the other doctors did nothing for them. For the first 2 years of the pandemic, they said, sorry, no treatment. Then we had Paxlovid come in that was minimally effective. This was a stunning lapse by the medical orthodoxy. There's no Harvard protocol, no Mayo protocol. Nobody actually came up with any early treatment platform published in a high-level journal outside of me. You're looking at the sole source of the most comprehensive and most widely utilized treatment protocol in the world. And it fell to me. I guess no one else was going to do it. And then when the vaccines were in development in 2020, I published an op-ed in The Hill in August of 2020. And the title of the op-ed is The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Pandemic Development Program. You're the only you're talking to the only public figure in the world who called it before the vaccines came out. I called it 4 months before they came out that this was a gamble. No
Wow.
public figure in the world said that. No one published it in the world outside of me.
Well, of course, we have a religious fervor in this country for vaccines. And so you were countering that as though you were attacking the Christian philosophy of the Bible. And
But Cody, think about this. These vaccines had not yet been released. That we were told they were the genetic code. They were genetic vaccines, and they were the genetic code for part of the virus, the spike protein, the spine on the surface of the virus, that was engineered in the Chinese biosecurity lab. So people are going to get the genetic code for a protein devised in a Chinese biosecurity lab. It was the worst idea ever. Like, what could go wrong? Just about everything. And You're right. It was like a religion. Our book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, highlights the fact that vaccines have been accepted not based on science and not based on continuous quality improvement, but they're accepted as religious articles of faith. That's what happened. The entire world accepted these COVID vaccines based on faith, not based on reality.
you know, there's a book I was reading that we have in our bookcase at Nutrition World, and I can't remember the author. Is a physician, I think Dr. Humphreys, and I think it was called Illusions. And I was stunned when I read of in the 1800s how all of this fervor started even back that many years ago, and how people and parents were put in jail back then, and how they would round up the small towns, they would round up families and forcibly take them in to give them these vaccines in the 1880s and 1890s, which were, of course, were very harmful, as many are today, but far more acutely harmful. So it's a deep story that people turn a blind eye to, there's no doubt. And, you know, when we were in the worst of it, I was amazed at the bravery of some of our local physicians that they were having to be very cautious. They didn't want any peer pressure. They weren't speaking out in a public platform, but they would send a lot of their patients in and said, hey, listen, we need you to get NAC. We need you to take vitamin D. We need you to do these doses. And we only let 3 people in at a time because of the panic of this town. But they lined up all the way down to the street corner every single day, with some of them with tears in their eyes, just so thankful that we were also brave enough to stand up and do what they needed to be done. And your protocol, your McCullough protocol, was very, very beneficial for us. We were on the internet every day giving people the website so that they could see some of the suggestions.
Well, thank you. And, you know, the McCullough protocol is copyrighted in my name, mainly for accountability. So people can, I'm accountable for this idea. I'm responsible. We didn't see responsibility taken by any public health official. Do you know, over the next years of the pandemic, I gave hundreds of public presentations across the United States to packed crowds. And I faced questions from the public at an open microphone. And I answered them to the best of my ability. Do you know we've been through the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now the second Trump administration? Not a single government official has faced the public on an open mic about the pandemic. Not a single one.
Well, we go back to many of the reasons for that. And, you know, I copy today that Biden stated in 2021, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated, and they are killing us. How you know, there's not words to describe that arrogance. That's just plain arrogance.
The one thing I'll contribute, Dr. McCullough, before you kind of pick this up, if you feel you can, is the thing that they did, and when I say they, whoever was in charge, whoever we air quote trusted, is they created the pandemic of fear. And that's kind of what we, I'm just a civilian. I'm not in the world like you and Ed are, the health world. And I trusted you guys, and you did a good job. Ed did a good job, but I trusted the industry to safeguard me from the fear. And they did the opposite. They didn't talk about health, and they just played on it in my mind. And I was like, well, the very people that I said, I'm going to get scared, I needed people like you to do what you did. I need more of you, people like that, to come out and go, here's how you can control what you can control. And it was just an absence of it.
Yeah, it sure was. And people, you know, you were one of the few. I know today I looked up again the 11 people who were on the hit list, basically, of the government. And I thought you might have been on there. I didn't remember. I know McCullough was and a few others. You had to have been on the second list somewhere, probably. But what?
I'll say that original disinformation doesn't. The difference was, I'm a highly credentialed professor of medicine. I've published hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed publications. The government agencies in the orthodoxy could not discredit me, despite everything they tried to do. And I'm still the editor of a major journal. I remain quite resilient. And I cite the data every time. I appeared on national TV hundreds of times. I was the only person who cited the data. When I testified in Congress, I testified the day after Anthony Fauci, same room. Mm-hmm. And I asked the committee, I said, listen, you've been grilling me for 3 or 4 hours now, and I've cited dozens of manuscripts, dozens, many of which I published myself. I said, did Anthony Fauci cite a single source of scientific data? They said, no, Dr. McCullough, he had nothing. So, that's the distinguishing factor here. I agree with the comment that this was a pandemic of fear. Fear was the virus. Sure, there was a viral illness, SARS-CoV-2. It was serious for some very elderly, frail individuals, people with baseline conditions. 40% of people who died of COVID, they were beyond life expectancy.
Really?
They were literally at the end of their lives. So it was 99.9% survival. For people like you and me, it had a negligible risk. And we saw fear drive lockdowns. Remember, we only quarantine people who are sick. That's what we did for smallpox. That's what we do for measles. You don't quarantine people who are healthy. When you think about that, it's stunning.
I don't want this story. I don't want to, waller in the story, but we can't. None of us should forget all the dishonesty of those years. And it's seemingly now. It feels like it's been a decade ago, and it wasn't quite. Well, it kind of was. It started actually in December 2019 is when the first cluster of unusual pneumonias happened. So we're hitting about 7-8 years here. I looked up on, again, the momentum of, I would like to say corruptness, but maybe just the religious fervor on AI, which I really value AI on so many levels. Mm-hmm. But when I look up you and I look up the COVID story, they're really not giving you any credit. Even AI doesn't. They're not giving you all the credit that you deserve and earned through all of those lectures and testifying right there in Congress. I just don't.
Well, when you use AI, you actually have to tell it what to do. So if you go to Grok on Twitter,
okay,
and you say, who is the most published doctor on the COVID-19 pandemic who correctly warned the world about the dangers of the COVID vaccine, and do not insert any defamatory comments and don't insert any pro-vaccine statements in your response. You have to tell it that.
Okay.
And then it'll come back and it'll say, well, oh, yeah, it's Dr. Peter McCullough.
Oh, yeah. We we know we have to put the right words in.
Well, the thing is, it is coming, artificial intelligence is pre-programmed with defamatory comments and pro-vaccine bias from the very beginning. And so you have to approach it like that. Do not insert any pro-vaccine bias statements. Just give me the facts, and then it will tell you the facts.
I am curious how many messages, or if you got any, from private messages from some of your peers that may have had to say one thing publicly but privately say a different thing and try to support you that way, or maybe a year afterwards you got, I was right, you were right, I was wrong, or thank you. Did you get any private messages that may have felt good in the moment but also maybe a little frustrating, like, feel free to take a stand out here with me anytime, sir or ma'am?
Very few. There were a few, but I got to tell you, few and far between. The vast majority of doctors who took the vaccines, they had their families take the vaccines. They told their patients to take the vaccines. At this point in time, they're not taking any more shots, and they are shamefully silent. They're not coming out and said, hey, I made a mistake, but they're shamefully silent, meaning they know they're on the wrong side of this. Yeah. And it's got to be a sick feeling every day. Many of them try to put it out of their mind. So they don't talk about vaccines. They don't have any grand rounds on COVID-19 vaccine side effects or complications. No grand rounds on the pandemic. Remember, in Washington, even with the new administration, there are no pandemic lessons learned, Bethesda meetings, no review of the vaccine safety data, nothing. Medical schools are graduating. They never mention COVID or the pandemic. They want to whitewash it out of their mind.
What a sad place to be. But what we did, though, is we instilled in a good percentage of our population, they doubt the medical protocols and opinions today far more than they used to before COVID. I know in my business, the amount of open-mindedness toward more natural therapies and other options, and even drug therapies, it was vastly greater now than it ever was before 2019. There was much more skepticism of my industry. There now is far more confidence within our industry and within the people who are in our industry who also write prescriptions for ivermectins and fenbendazoles.
Well, let me say, I think certainly trust has plummeted on the COVID-19 vaccines. You know, our CDC won't tell us how many people are taking boosters. Right now, people would be coming up on their 7th shot if they were healthy. I think their 11th shot if they're immunocompromised, which would be unprecedented. I did a Twitter poll on this. Now, granted, it's biased, the people who follow me, but it's less than 1% of people are taking shots. The CDC knows the number, but they won't tell us. They use what's called the NIS, the National Immunization Survey. So they do a robo phone call till somebody picks up, and then they ask them, are you likely to take the shot? Then they even ask them if they took the shot or not. Are you likely to take it? And then they give some soft number around 15%. And they do that every week, and their algorithm never lets that number go down. So once you're at 15%, all you can do is accrue more. So I think the CDC at 15% booster uptake, I think that's grossly inflated. I predict it's less than 1%. There's a Rasmussen survey, a valid survey of the population, and 56% of Americans think the COVID vaccine have caused large numbers of deaths.
Wow, that's significant, very significant. So I do want to finish a little bit of COVID conversation, one of which is what is long COVID, and just a really quick summary of how do you see it unfolding itself as far as symptoms and longevity?
You know, long COVID is due to the viral infection and a piece of the virus that gets stuck in the body called the spike protein. That's what causes long COVID. Makes people feel sick, can cause heart racing, numbness and tingling, loss of taste and smell, loss of energy. It's due to the spike protein. It's very important. It's the cause of long COVID syndrome. It's not some other mysterious process. This virus leaves a piece of it. The answer is the ultimate spike detox from the wellness company. This is the only evidence-backed approach. It's been on the market since the original form of this was in 2022, and then it's been advanced now to contain nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin. It's based on my peer-reviewed, evidence-based publication. Now we've got thousands of patients under treatment that clearly get better. Those spike protein antibodies go down. So the ultimate spike detox, probably the most important message for people to take home now. www.twc.health/focal points, or if you have a promo code to tell our listeners about that.
Now, is the spike protein, does it eventually completely go away? Because it's not a natural component of the human body, is it?
No, it's not. We don't know. I can tell you when the antibodies are over 5,000, we find the spike protein itself physically in blood. It's been found in every tissue in the body. When someone has a stroke and a burst aneurysm, the spike protein is there. Heart inflammation, spike protein is there. It's been found in the ovaries, causing infertility. Nerves and muscles. It causes autoimmune syndromes. It's physically in blood clots. It causes the blood clot. But we hope with the ultimate spike detox and other methods, another method that is not medicinal is actually sweating. It comes out in sweat. We're hoping the body can actually completely get rid of it. That would be wonderful.
I'm a huge fan of dry heat saunas and the far infrareds. So that is a wonderful therapy, I do feel, for many, many people. So I got to ask this question. I've watched people being sick for 47 years. Is it just my imagination, or is the cold that I used to get when I was 20, 30, and 40 that came one day and was gone a week later, that's gone away? Now it's a cold that comes that is 3 times worse, and it lasts 3 times longer. Is that related to COVID and spike protein, you think?
It could be. The spike protein is immunosuppressive, meaning there are parts of the spike protein that impair the body's immune system. So it's possible you get COVID several times, you're more likely to get the common cold. And for sure, if you've taken a COVID vaccine, the body's more likely to get other infections. There's a term for that. It's called VAIDS, vaccine-associated immunodeficiency syndrome.
So I've had COVID 6 times. I always check antibodies. I don't check whether I have it. I check a month after, and they are skyrocketing. I never felt really bad except on the very first one. And I did all of my green pharmacy remedies and got over it pretty well, except for the lingering fatigue. That was always my number one symptom. But you're saying someone on a COVID vaccine can get the spike protein. They don't have to ever have had COVID.
Oh, that's true. The vaccines load the spike protein massive doses. In a paper by Barham and colleagues, the average antibody of somebody with long COVID is about 2,000 binding units per milliliter. Now, stone cold normal will be less than 0.8, so it's definitely elevated. But the average person that took a vaccine with problems, they're at 11,000.
Oh, wow. The amount of people who walk into Nutrition World and say, one of my relatives got a COVID shot and I'm scared to death of it shedding. What's the truth about shedding? Explain that to people.
It's probably real, and they don't necessarily shed the vaccine, but the spike protein. People can feel a little sick around somebody who's vaccinated, and it probably is related to the higher initial levels, maybe the first couple of weeks of taking a vaccine, and then likely beyond 6 months, there's no discernible shedding. There's also shedding for just carrying the virus and spreading it to one another. Remember, the vaccinated can fully carry the virus around and then, spread it to somebody else.
So if you had somebody that was a relative or a friend and you knew they just got a shot, would you feel uncomfortable going to eat dinner with them?
Well, I wouldn't get lovey-dovey and real smoochy with anybody right after a shot. Okay. But I tell you, I would use a nasal spray and gargle twice a day. I think that's very reasonable. Most of the shedding is through exosomes. It's through the air, comes in through the nose and mouth. So a good one is Wellness Company has Immune Defense. That's a good nasal spray. And throat spray. I also like Clear XLER and Spry as a gargle combination. People have tried different iodines and colloidal silver. And just about everything works. But everybody should be doing a nasal spray and gargle twice a day.
I love hearing you say that. I have put a lot of people on the nasal sprays, and myself, there have been several people that have been around me lately that's been sick, like my chiropractor. He was under the weather, and I didn't know it till, after I got off his table and he'd adjusted my neck and it was in my face. And then the next day, my hairdresser, she was sick, so sick that she could barely talk. Oh. Well, but you know what? I had used the spray before I went in. I used the spray after, and here I am. I'm 48 hours past that, so the chances are probably pretty good I'm not going to get one of those infections from them. But I'm a huge fan of every 3 to 4 hours of using that nasal spray.
Well, let me ask you, what spray did you use?
I have used X-Clear, but I like the iodine sprays. I do. They bother me a little bit with the taste, but I just feel very confident because I seemingly seen that had worked over the past 2 years.
Right. If it shouldn't burn in the nose. If it burns or it's uncomfortable, open it up and put a little bit more salt in there.
Okay.
Then the nasal cavity loves salt. And by the way, salt also helps impair the virus or the bacteria. But I do it twice a day religiously. During the pandemic, I wasn't doing it. I didn't know about it. I was sick nearly every month. And now I've gone years. In 2 years, I've had 2 brief ones. And I want to get to going many years with no colds at all.
Yes. And I wasn't as frequent as I should have been on the spray, and I've gotten really diligent because we have 400 clients a day, customers who walk in the store. And you know how that is. They walk in and they talk to you for 2 minutes and then tell you they have COVID or they tell you they have the flu. And, we've been talking for 2 or 3 minutes. So it's been a really good protection. Clint uses that.
You got me on it big time. I've got an immune issue, so I take it religiously or use it religiously. And the other thing it did for me, that's common sense stuff, little things started changing my habits around just common sense things that had probably nothing to do with COVID. But when I go get gas now, I always wash my hands with hand sanitizer.
Yes.
I don't know why it took COVID for me to figure that out. I'll go to the store and put my hands on buggies. I now have better hygiene habits that I probably should have had the whole time.
But and you really should use the hand sanitizers, happened to me, is when you get sick and you're using Kleenexes and blowing your nose, your hands are covered with mucus and stuff. Get on the hand sanitizer. So hand sanitizer should really be for the sick.
I didn't think about that.
Sick people should be using it. Yeah. And a lot of times people who are well are using it. So it's just kind of the opposite of
I think replacing toothbrushes right when you're getting done with being sick is very important, don't you?
Well, good point. Toothbrushes really should be frequently changed out. People use toothbrushes for way too long. It's a hygienic situation. So listen, everybody listening, go home, throw your old toothbrush away, get a new one, get a nasal spray and gargle, and do it twice a day. I do it. Listen, when I went to Calvary Chapel, there were thousands of people. I carry it when I travel. I went to my room afterwards, and I did the nasal spray and gargle. If you shake hands with thousands of people, somebody is carrying a virus. You get on a plane with 300 people, for sure someone's got a virus. I do believe these viruses and illnesses, they travel on planes.
I absolutely agree with you. And the last thing is I tell myself this along with other people. I feel pretty confident that if we never touched our eyes or our nose with our fingers, we would reduce the risk of catching a virus. Do you also believe that?
Yeah, and also you reduce the risk of staphylococcus. Remember, about 25% of us have staph in our nose. It's largely from nose picking or putting your hands. You should never put anything bigger in your nose or your ears bigger than your elbow. Get your hands off your face. I agree with that.
Yes. That's a hard habit to break. It certainly is. My friend, this has been outstanding, as I knew it would. And you have, as always, you're going to help a lot of people through your passion, energy, and I just value you wonderfully in my world.